What is happening at the FBI?
Why are you hiding pedophiles? Why are you shielding pedophiles? Why are you protecting pedophiles?
That is maybe the most offensive thing you could say to me.
Co-conspirator to psychopathic sicko Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, who befriended girls and then arranged to transport these girls to Jeffrey Epstein's residence and was even present during the abuse of some of these girls, had her appeal rejected today by the Supreme Court. It says Supreme Court rejects appeal from Ghislaine Maxwell.
Now we're seeing one very clear reason why you want to build a political FBI, the Epstein files. You want an FBI blindly loyal to Trump and to you as his enforcer so you can continue your cover-up of a massive international sex trafficking ring with more than 1,000 victims, betraying all of the survivors of the sexual violence.
I do not have a conspiratorial bone in my body. I truly don't. But this is weird. Something weird is happening at the FBI. Kash Patel sat down with Bret Baier for Special Report last night, and they got into a bit of what's happening with the Epstein files. Where are they? Listen to this.
There are.
The Epstein thing, you dealt with Maria, you said, as far as you know, he killed himself.
I'm telling you, he killed himself.
The other thing on the internet is the Epstein files. What's the answer to that?
The answer to that is the same as everything else. I'm not going to withhold information from the American public ever, but I'm also not going to rush to get it out there in a format in which they can't rely on it. So on the Epstein matter or any other matters, we are diligently working on that, and it takes time to go through years of investigations, years of political maneuvering, and years of cover-up to get the American people what they deserve. And that's what I'm going to give them on everything.
This, of course, comes on the heels of Pam Bondi calling all these influencers to the White House and giving them files saying this is everything, only to find out that everything in those files was already publicly released and there was absolutely nothing new in them. Okay. Then she said the FBI's got documents we didn't know about, so we're going to get to the bottom of them. This is months ago. So Dan Bongino goes on Fox and Friends. Here he is talking about Epstein.
There is nothing in the file at this point on the Epstein case, and there's going to be a disclosure on this coming shortly. We are working through there is video. That is something the public does not.
There's video of him killing himself.
No, not the actual act, but the entire MCC Bay. There was only one camera. There's video that when you look at the video, and we will release, that's what's taken a while on this. We are working on cleaning it up to make sure you have an enhanced, and we're going to give the original so you don't think there were any shenanigans. You're going to see there's no one there but him. Right. There's just nobody there. So I say to people all the time, if you have a tip, let us know. But there's no DNA, there's no audio, there's no fingerprints, there's no suspects, there's no accomplices, there's no tips, there is nothing. If you have it, I'm happy to see it. There's video clear as day. He's the only person in there and the only person coming out. You can see it.
Before you got in this job, you called for full release of Epstein files, telling podcaster Benny Johnson that the only reason the list was not released by DOJ and FBI was, quote, because of who's on that list. Upon your confirmation, you promised that, quote, there will be no cover-ups, no missing documents, no stone left unturned.
The Supreme Court on Monday rejected an appeal from Ghislaine Maxwell, the imprisoned former girlfriend of Jeffrey Epstein. On the first day of their new term, the justices decided to take up the case that would have drawn renewed attention to the sordid sexual abuse saga after Donald Trump's administration sought to tamp down criticism over its refusal to publicly release more investigative files from Jeffrey Epstein's case, because it's all a Democrat hoax. Lawyers for Maxwell, a British socialite, argued that she never should have been tried or convicted for her role in luring teenage girls to be sexually abused by Epstein. Can you just think about that? Think about that request. I should have never been tried or convicted after ruining the lives of how many girls who trusted Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine? She's serving a 20-year prison term, though she was moved from a low-security federal prison in Florida to a minimum security prison camp in Texas after she was interviewed in July by Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. Don't you worry, Ghislaine Maxwell is not suffering in prison as she should be. As is their custom, the justices did not explain why they turned away the appeal. Trump's Republican administration had urged the high court to stay out of the case. Maxwell's lawyers contended that a non-prosecution agreement reached in 2007 by federal prosecutors in Miami, think Alex Acosta, and Epstein's lawyers also protected his potential co-conspirators from federal charges anywhere in the country. Maxwell was prosecuted in Manhattan, and the federal appeals court there ruled that the prosecution was proper. The jury found her guilty of sex trafficking a teenage girl, among other charges. Maxwell's trial, which wasn't televised, featured accounts of the sexual exploitation of girls as young as 14, told by 4 women who described being abused as teens in the 1990s and early 2000s at Epstein's home. And get this, neither Maxwell's lawyers nor the Federal Bureau of Prisons has explained the reason for her transfer. But one of her lawyers, David Oscar Marcus, said that she is innocent and never should have been tried, much less convicted. Just speculating here, but the Bureau of Prisons might have gotten a call from a Trump liaison who said, "Hey, you know what? We need to take it a little easy on Ghislaine. She and Jeffrey were friends for 15 years and I can't let him down now." She, just like Jeffrey Epstein, is probably on a work release program where she only has to spend 12 hours in jail 5 days a week, off on the weekends. Not saying that's happening, but it could be, and none of us would be any the wiser. In this article by NBC, it says Maxwell was convicted in 2022 of 3 counts related to her role in assisting Epstein in recruiting and grooming his victims, some of whom were as young as 14 years old. She would befriend the girls and then assist in transporting them to Epstein's residences, and was sometimes present when the abuse took place, according to prosecutors. The Epstein case and Maxwell's involvement were thrust into the news again this year as the Justice Department and the FBI said that, contrary to theories promoted by some who now work in President Donald Trump's administration, there was no Epstein client list or evidence that he was blackmailing famous men. Maxwell was interviewed by Blanche at a Florida courthouse. She was given limited immunity, allowing her to speak freely without fear of prosecution for anything she said, except for in the event of a false statement. Because if you lie to the government, that's a felony. If they lie to you, that's policy. She repeatedly denied witnessing any sexually inappropriate interactions involving Trump. Of course she did, because she got a call for that too. According to records released in August, meant to distance the president from the disgraced financier. Epstein was arrested in 2019 on sex trafficking charges and was accused of sexually abusing dozens of teenage girls. A month later, he was found dead in a New York jail cell in what investigators described as a suicide. Even though everybody knows that Christmas tree ornaments don't hang themselves, and neither do Jeffrey Epstein's. The Epstein case had consumed Trump's administration following an announcement from the FBI and the Justice Department in July that Epstein had killed himself, despite conspiracy theories to the contrary that a, quote, client list that Attorney General Pam Bondi had intimated was on her desk did not actually exist, and that no additional documents from the high-profile investigation were suitable to be released. Because we got to protect our pals in the big club, which you and I aren't in.
You and I are not in the big club.
The announcement produced outrage from conspiracy theorists, that's all we are, and Trump supporters who had been hoping to see proof of a government cover-up. The expectation was driven in part by comments from officials, including FBI Director I Can't Look at You Straight Without Lying Kash Patel, and Deputy Director Dan Bongino, the Rumble platform sellout, who on podcasts before taking their current positions had repeatedly promoted the idea that damaging details about prominent people were being withheld. Now they're the ones in prominent positions doing the withholding.
You said Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. People don't believe it.
Well, I mean, listen, they have a right to their opinion, but as someone who has worked as a public defender, as a prosecutor, who's been in that prison system, who's been in the Metropolitan Detention Center, who's been in segregated housing, you know a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was.
He killed himself. You want me to? I've seen the whole file.
Good job, guys. Patel, for instance, said in at least one podcast interview before becoming FBI director that Epstein's, quote, black book was under the, quote, direct control of the director of the FBI. And now that same black book is under the direction of the current director of the FBI, Kash Patel. But the Injustice Department said its review of evidence in the government's possession determined that no, quote, further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted. Maybe because people are in the black book that are in the current administration that you don't want to get into trouble? The department noted that much of the material was placed under seal by a court to protect victims and, quote, only a fraction of it, quote, would have been aired publicly had Epstein gone to trial. This seems like a cover-up for everything by everybody in all administrations. And nobody's interested in letting the corrupt cat out of the bag. Faced with fury from his base, Trump sought to quickly turn the page, shutting down questioning of Bondi about Epstein at a White House cabinet meeting and deriding as weakling supporters he said were falling for the Jeffrey Epstein hoax. That's right, my friends. In America, you can stay behind bars for something that is just a hoax. How deep of a rabbit hole does this corruption go? Leave your thoughts about this for the World and the Global Thought Police. If you like this content, maybe you'll like some of my other content, check out my most popular video playlist. I'm sure there's some videos on there that you haven't seen yet. And unfortunately, because of the corruption and tyranny in this country, all of those videos are still very much in play today as they were the day that I made them. If you want to support this channel further, you can do it for free. Just like this video and share it with everybody you know. We are intent on breaking the left versus right paradigm, and that paradigm will be broken. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification icon, and I will see you in the next video.